Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's do it 420. I'm just finishing a thing with Yvonne, and I was thinking about it, so let's have at it. There's, at work the other day, I was having a conversation with this woman about John Wick, and we were talking about gun violence. And we were talking about this thing of, it's just like, yeah, I just want my kid to be able to go to school safe and not worry about somebody pulling a gun out. And I said, I want to keep my John Wick. I like my John Wick. Now, the reason I said that is because as we were having that conversation, I asked her, do you believe that the movies, the things that we engage in our particular culture, in some way leads to those particular things? Are they related? Is there a link from one to the other? Meaning, does one in any way, to any measure, to any real degree, influence the other? Her first response was no. And then we talked. And I did my prosecutor thing, my God's prosecutor thing. And I asked questions. I have questions. I want to know. So if you have a situation where your society sits at a film where a guy is an assassin and he murders people, and it's glitz and it's glamour, and I would argue that the glitz and glamour gives this perspective, it's coloring to the eye or the lens of the author. It's glamorous to be this way. It's awesome to be this way. This guy is fucking awesome. He's goddamn John Wick. Look at all these guns arrayed around him, and he's keep murdering all these people. It's like killing Nazis. It's easy. He's awesome. He's fucking awesome. Let's step away from the film for the moment, though. What about society itself? What is the image of the gun? Does that gun make people feel a particular way when they hold that gun in their hand? But why does it make them feel that way? I can take the life of somebody else. I have a society that tells me that cash is a ruling factor to everything else. But I've learned something else. That whether or not I can rub somebody off the game board, it's also pretty fucking powerful. My society also tells me that. It worships that the Second Amendment is the best thing on the planet. And these gun nuts tell me every day how awesome that this, to some degree, is a level of freedom. And I'm going to hold on to that gun. Now, are you telling me that a society that functions in that particular way, that looks at power and profit and maximum gain and self-interest in this very particular way, that weapons, that the gun also wouldn't necessarily play a role in that particular society? Now, I am making this case that the art is representative of the society itself. The art is not separate and distinct from the society that created. If you're going to come out with a thing like John Wick, and I love my John Wick, I love that fucking film. If you're going to come out with something like that, that's representative of the culture. Otherwise, the culture will look at that and be aghast by it. If it was a film with somebody taking a dump for 2 hours, you're not glamorizing that. I don't give a shit how much you try to glamorize it. That's not something that people are going to be like, that was an awesome experience. They're going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with this author? Why is this guy doing this film? No one looks at John Wick and thinks to themselves, oh my God, I'm aghast by what these people are doing. These people are murdering people all across the city. This is terrifying. Certainly, some of those bullets hit real people who were just going about their way. This is horrifying. That's not the experience with John Wick at all. My experience with John Wick is killing Nazis. I love my John Wick. Why do I love my John Wick? Why the fuck do I love my John Wick? What's the society that produces a person that looks at that film and says, I love my John Wick? Yes, I'm condemning myself here. I'm an appendage of this culture, and I love my John Wick. The point I'm getting at is it possible to have a film like John Wick that is fucking popular, like John Wick, that even lefties, I'm a lefty's lefty, love that film, John Wick. Even I can say I love it. Even though I can step outside of myself and say, I'm aghast by this film. Yes, this thing that I'm encased in loves it. You don't think that filters into the individual? Meaning, the fact that I love it is built, it's filtered into me. I didn't grow up in a society that was aghast by it. You could have had a society that was aghast by that film. That's not our situation. Society loves it. What do you think that happens? When does that happen? And is it possible? The thing that wires it into me where I say, oh, I love my John Wick, at some point, it's built into me as a child. It's not an experience as an adult that I all of a sudden came to realization to. That thing is built into me through my society, through my interactions, through the things as me as a consciousness bump into and bump in around in my particular society, around my home. Cultural, societal factors influencing the individual to the point where something is hardwired into that person. I love my John Wick. I'm getting at is it possible to love your John Wick and complain about gun violence in schools? Because is it possible to separate those things? If there is a tether linking to the thing in me that loves this particular film, certainly that tether functions to a degree of throughout the society. It's not just me. When did that take place? And did that take place as a child as I bumped through the society? And no, I wasn't aware it was taking place. I was playing Cowboys and Indians like others. It didn't occur to me that I was murdering people or pretending that I was murdering people. But as a child, that's what I've taken on. That's my narrative. That's the thing that's built into me as a child based upon the society that I'm in and around. Is gun violence a societal issue? And is the fact that you have a kid who will go to a particular school and take a gun to school an aspect of the society itself? Meaning, is it possible to have John Wick as a film and to not have gun violence? Meaning there's a one-to-one relationship between those things. It's almost like I can't think of the name of it. It's an experiment. It's a seamless whole in a sense. I can't think of Bell's theorem. You have this thing where it looks like a mess of things, but from a particular perspective, those things are linked and those things are related. It's like a chessboard. There's certain factors on the board that push for certain things, certain incentives. All I'm making a case is I'm making this case poorly at this point. That kid who goes to school with that particular gun has a particular image of that particular gun from a particular narrative that kid got from somewhere. It wasn't magic. And having that particular narrative, that particular kid who may or may not use that particular gun, but at the very least has some ideas about that gun. Does that kid also like John Wick? I would wager that kid loves John Wick. I'm saying that the fact that that kid is taking that gun to school to some degree is a condemnation of our society. And the fact that we love John Wick is somewhat of a condemnation of our society, depending upon the perspective that you're taking. If you dislike one, is it possible to pretend that the other is not related? Meaning, I hate the gun violence that takes place in our society. I hate the gun violence that takes place in our schools. I hate the fact that that kid may take that gun to that school. But shouldn't I ask, why is that kid taking that gun to that school? What is the perspective of that kid that gets that kid to want to take the gun to that school? And is that perspective, how that perspective was created, in some degree the same reason that I love my John Wick? I don't think it's easy to say no. That's my point. So I'll leave it at that. Let me know what you think. Put your comments at the bottom. I love my John Wick. Yes, I can make a distinction between those two things. Can everybody? Can everybody? And can you honestly say that the fact that that film exists and the fact that film is that popular and the fact that people love it, something makes people love it. Otherwise, they wouldn't show up to the film. Otherwise, the film wouldn't even make sense to them. I'm making the case that their society loves it. The thing that builds that thing into their society that loves it is the same thing that gets that kid to take that gun to that school. They're not separate. To affect one, you have to affect the whole. That's what I'm getting at. The system itself is the issue, not necessarily the kid who took the gun to school. He's just a factor in the system. He's picking up what society is oozing out that's culturing him in that particular culture. All right, I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, write, subscribe. But you can always support the work through Patreon. Fucking A, it's under 10 minutes. Very nice.